Hi, beautiful, and welcome back to Listen to This When You're Done Dieting, the ultimate podcast for women's health. So, today I want to chat to you guys a little bit more about Sibo. Sibo falls under the gut health realm. So, we're going to be sticking to some gut health topics today. And basically, what SIBO stands for is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. I will tell you guys some key symptoms to look out for, some stats, of course. I will give you some solutions, and we'll talk about why it occurs. And I want to start with that first, why it's occurring. So, one of the first reasons is actually the breakdown of the intestinal mucus barrier. And that's brought on by a couple of things. One of the first ones is because nowadays everything is processed, right? So when we have the majority of processed foods, we start adding chemicals and toxins. And one of the ones that breaks down the gut mucus lining the most, or the intestinal mucus lining for SIBO, is something called emulsifiers. And emulsifiers are the additives to products which gets them to bind. So it's found in peanut butter, ice cream, it's found in like cooking coconut milk type of thing. It's in a lot of products nowadays, unfortunately. So we have to be really, really careful with our intake of them because that does break down the gut barrier. And then on top of that, nutritional deficiencies is another big one for that. And the reason being because nowadays we eat the majority of our foods out of a package. That's just the standard, let's say, American diet. I find actually, I live in Europe and I find that it's so much better here in terms of getting away from packaged foods because we have more farmers market and fresh produce, which is cheaper and more accessible. So it really also depends which part of the world you're in. But I do find that a lot of people are not eating enough prebiotic fibers. And this is basically what feeds your microbes. Your microbes, and what you should know firsthand is that fiber, when we intake it, it stays intact all the way until our colon. And the reason why we need so much fiber is because that's what our microbes are eating. And that's how they can metabolize and create that into nutrients, vitamins, minerals that our body actually needs. Now, if you're not getting enough of that, they get hungry. And what starts to happen is it goes and it eats that gut mucus lining to get nutrients. And then we have something which is a different syndrome. It's called leaky gut syndrome. And that's where basically toxins and food products, they start to break off into the bloodstream. So that leaky gut, essentially. So those are two main culprits for starting of SIBO. But there's actually a couple of other ones. Another one is fecalization. And this is going to be a bit gross, but we're going to chat about it. So fecal matter, aka our poop, it's gut health, so we're obviously going to be talking about poop. Now scientists are finding more and more fecal bacteria higher up in the GI tract, and it's called fecalization. And that is a primary cause of SIBO, because these bacteria, they're not good. We only want to keep them in the colon, otherwise they wreak havoc in other parts of our system. So that fecal matter is starting to ascend. There's different reasons why this can happen, but this is one of the leading causes for SIBO. And another one is the overuse of antibiotics. Nowadays, we're in a time of antibiotics. So of course, there's a time and place for antibiotics after surgery in case of an infection, go for it. But there are other times when we're really overdoing it. I see a lot of people now, for the common cold, they'll go and get some antibiotics when really they just need to boost their immune system. And the trouble with antibiotics, I'm going to use an analogy here to make it a little bit clearer, is imagine that your gut is this beautiful, luxurious penthouse, okay? Apartment building. And you have good tenants, you have bad tenants. Some tenants keep the place clean and they make the place seem more valuable. And then there are other tenants who really make a mess, destroy things. And that's like our gut. We have good bacteria and we have bad bacteria. So with that in mind, When we take antibiotics, it's basically like setting fire to your gorgeous, luxurious penthouse. You kill off all of the tenants, not only the good ones, but also the bad ones. So that is the positive. But you also create an environment where you attract more of these bad bacteria to proliferate. And you basically set your gut up for worsened gut health. And studies have shown that people's guts never fully recover after a round of antibiotics. And I'm sure, like myself, I'm guilty of this as well. And many of you guys who are listening, is that we've taken multiple rounds of antibiotics throughout our lifetime. So this is something that's really changed from like our hunter-gatherer times, is there's definitely more of a use of antibiotics. And not only with our actual prescription use, but it's now given in our feed, antibiotic use in when we're feeding cows and chickens and everything. And so they have these antibodies in them, and we're becoming more antibiotic resistant, and we're eating all of those things. So one thing that I do recommend, and I will start with one solution already: organic always. Please always eat organic, whether it's your fruits and veggies, your meats, and if you're having fish, make sure it's never farmed, because again, farmed fish, they're feeding antibiotic feed to the fish. There's a whole tangent I can go on as well about farm fish, but let's stick to the antibiotic use. You want wild caught fish, because they're eating like a normal diet. They're not being fed these antibiotic strains. So that's another thing, is the overuse of antibiotics. And like we were saying as well, processed foods is another one, not just the emulsifiers, but the fact that our diets are lacking in so many things. And so basically some of the regular symptoms that you might see. So now we've kind of discussed, okay, now we know what Sibo is. We know why it's occurring, and we know that we've drastically changed our lifestyles from hunter-gatherer times, and we're seeing the effects in our gut. But how can you know if you have Sibo? Especially because a lot of doctors, they're not going to spend the time with you to really go over your gut health, and because this affects so many people. Studies have shown that it affects 1 in 3 people. And I just want to also let you guys know that the majority of the research I'm getting on Sibo was by this fantastic book. It's called Super Gut. It's by William Davis, MD, and it's incredible. And so I'm sourcing a lot of stuff from there. If you guys want to go for a read and check that out, it's really great. So some of the chronic symptoms include chronic abdominal pain, diarrhea, bloating, hypothyroidism, rosacea, eczema, psoriasis, pretty much a lot of skin conditions, because our gut really mirrors our skin. We're also seeing obesity, IBS, all different types of IBS. So even IBS-C and IBS-D. And then ulcerative colitis. These are just a few symptoms to name them. But pretty much the majority of things that we're seeing that's becoming increasingly common, it all starts from gut health. There are even studies and podcasts that I've listened to where scientists are saying that nowadays we're seeing a lot of also hormonal conditions, which a lot of women are experiencing. It all starts from poor gut health. So even if, let's say, you feel like you have great gut health, but you're suffering from a hormonal perspective, this is really for you as well, because they're so interconnected. And I discuss that a lot in my book, how all of our systems are connected: blood sugar, hormones, gut health, stress. It's all really connected. So that book title is Read This When You're Done Dieting. It's by me, Morgana Lakatos-Hayward, and it's available on Amazon. So you can also check that out if you want more additional information on how your systems interact and how to hack each one to balance, to lose weight without dieting, and all of these things, which I firmly hold in my heart to be true and know from my work with many clients. So that's just a little bit of what you can look for. Now, what can we start doing? Because I never like this fear-based way of approaching things because nowadays we see so much like scare tactics in marketing. Oh, you're going to get this if you do this, or you have this condition because you have this and this and this symptom, which I kind of did. But I want to give you guys also the solutions so you can start. There is a full gut health reset, which should be done, but I always advise to do it with like a practitioner. Like myself, so you can always get in touch with me if you would like. But these are some things you can start doing on your own. And the first one is to avoid emulsifiers in processed foods. So, firstly, and I just did this recently as I'm still learning and growing, is I checked all of the foods that I buy that come in a package. There's not many because I'm very good at getting mostly whole foods in my diet. But for example, I had to check the dairy-free milk that I'm using. I use almond milk or coconut milk. And I had to check that there were no emulsifiers in there. So check, that one was great. I also eat dark chocolate, 70% and up. So I had to check there's no emulsifiers in the brand that I'm buying. Check, that was awesome. Then the other thing that I do eat sometimes is coconut yogurt. And again, no emulsifiers in there. Check. And also pesto, I do buy, I should make it, but we're only human. I can't prep everything. So pesto I also buy, and that one was great. The one that I was surprised about is sometimes I cook with cooking coconut milk, and that had an emulsifier in it. So I will not be buying that brand, or I will have to search for another one. So go through your products and try and find the emulsifiers in there, and just have a good Google as well of those if you need some emulsifier, because they have really, really long names, some of them. So have a list of look at some of the common ones. And then, of course, the more that you can buy your foods, whole foods, you don't have to worry about this stuff. And that's what I love, is the majority of my diet is one ingredient, right? Like if I'm buying apples, it's just the apple. If I'm buying like chickpeas, it's just the chickpeas. So again, really have a look at your products and the amount that you're buying of processed versus whole foods. And this is definitely the biggest thing that has changed from our hunter-gatherer times, is there was no packaging back then. There were no additives. Now, of course, even if you buy whole foods, there still is pesticides, herbicides, and all these things which can disrupt your gut, which is why I was saying organic always. And make sure that when you're washing your produce, always have some baking soda. That I just put a little bit of baking soda on it, run it, and rinse it a couple of times with filtered water. And that is a great antibacterial to just get the majority of those pesticides and herbicides off of the organic foods. So that is a big one. And then again, coming back to those antibiotics, only take them if extremely necessary. If you have an infection, or if it's after surgery, of course, then of course you have to go for it. But make sure then, of course, you take some form of probiotic or prebiotic that your doctor recommends as well, because you need to be bringing in as many good bacteria as well. So that would be just one thing. But if, let's say, for example, last week I was on vacation and we went to Tunisia, where the drinking water is not great, and I had a little bit of food poisoning. And so I was offered antibiotics. I said no, and I wanted to just kind of get through it on my own. However, I do know that there is a herbal antibiotic which doesn't basically set fire to your apartment building, but it's a natural one. Mother Nature has really thought of it all. It's antibacterial, and it will basically just give a good little cleanse. And so when I got back, I made sure that I bought it, and it's oil of oregano. So I'm taking 2 tablets of that, and my gut immediately was better, and I'm not having those after effects of the antibiotic use. So again, use this sparingly. It's not an everyday supplement you should be taking. But for example, that really helped my gut health when I was coming back and trying to get back into a regular diet and recover my gut after a week of food poisoning and my gut not feeling so great. So that is one thing that you can do if you really need it, and it's a great herbal use. Berberine is another one. They use this a lot in Ayurvedic medicine as well. It's a type of plant, but again, you can get it in a supplement form. And then another one, and some supplementation that I do recommend. However, if you're already on supplementation or if you have questions, please always check with your doctor before adding something in. But nowadays, we're super vitamin deficient. Even if you go out in the sun, there's parts of the world where we don't absorb as much sunlight as we should. So it is always a good idea to get vitamin D, especially myself coming from Canada. I know for sure that where I lived in Toronto, barely any sunlight. So a lot of people are vitamin D deficient, and that causes a lot of changes in our gut health, our mood, our hormones. It's really such a powerful hormone that we need to be getting in. So you can take a good vitamin D supplement. And I also recommend that fish oil for that omega-3. And here's why these two supplements help your gut so much. Firstly, vitamin D deficiency is linked with a weaker intestinal gut lining. So you want to make sure you're getting that vitamin D in to strengthen it, because we do have so many processed foods and emulsifiers, which we learned, which can basically damage that. So that's one of the first ones. And omega-3 is so awesome for eliminating body-wide inflammation, and especially inflammation of your intestinal GI tract. And we definitely want that inflammation to go down, because that is a big marker for Sibo, is that we're constantly inflamed in our gut. That's causing the skin conditions, that's causing the obesity, it's causing different conditions to arise as a result. So this is basically one thing that can really, really help. Then another great thing is if you switch to cooking with extra virgin olive oil. So here's why. It contains 70% oleic acid, and this starts to repair that mucus barrier, which we talked about. It builds healthy bacterial species. And the reason why I say get extra virgin is because it's rich in polyphenols, which will again feed your microbiome. So these are a couple of things which I do really recommend. The fifth one is to cook with these top herbs and spices. You probably have them already in your spice drawer, so you can already start to bring in good and more, basically feed your gut bacteria, bring down inflammation. Some of them are antifungals, which is great because we can also, I haven't talked about this yet, but on top of Sibo, we can also have something called SIFO, so small intestinal fungal overgrowth, because we do have fungi species living within us. And when it starts to grow and get out of hand, then we need to also talk about antifungals. And so some of these herbs are also great for that. So you have oregano, cloves, rosemary, peppermint, ginger, cinnamon, cumin. These are 7 great spices. I'll repeat them one more time for you. Oregano, cloves, rosemary, peppermint, ginger, cinnamon, and cumin. Those are really, really great ones. Okay. So these are just a couple of 5 quick things you can start doing with your gut, but now you know so much more about Sibo, so you can start to look out for it. And if you do want to do a gut reset, then just contact me and I'd be really happy to help. My Instagram is @MorganaLH. Same with my TikTok, same with my YouTube now. So you guys can definitely reach out to me. My email is morgana@thisisn'tadiet.com. Okay, so thank you guys so much for listening. So awesome to have you here, and I will see you guys next week for another episode.